The parent company to all Motel 6 locations has issued a statement indicating that none of their motels should be sending guest lists to ICE officials. Now, this was a response to two Phoenix Motel 6 locations that decided to voluntarily share their guest lists on a daily basis with ICE officials, which then led to dozens of undocumented immigrants, or at least dozens of people getting arrested. So I was like, okay, how is this even allowed to happen? A Supreme Court ruling back in 2015 indicated that ICE officials could not force hotels to hand over this type of information. So they were obviously voluntarily doing it, and the parent company here is not happy about it. So let me give you their statement. Moving forward, to help ensure that this does not occur again, we will be issuing a directive to every one of our more than 1,400 locations nationwide, making clear that they are prohibited from voluntarily providing daily guest lists to ICE. The company will also be undertaking a comprehensive review of practices surrounding staff engagement with law enforcement, making certain that it is done in a manner that is respectful to our guests' rights. Now, it doesn't matter what your background is or whether or not there's any suspicion of you being in the country illegally. They would just straight up send their guest lists of everyone to ICE officials. So regardless of where you stand on the immigration debate, keep in mind that if you went to these two locations in Phoenix, they were giving your info to federal agents.
So look, this is actually a broader issue, but it doesn't get talked about much. And even Donald Trump intimated on a couple of occasions that he knew what guests that were staying at his properties were saying on the phone. In other words, they can, and apparently, according to Trump, did listen in on what their guests said. So that's outrageous. And now look, if you go to almost any of the big hotels now, they have cameras everywhere. Yeah. So they have that. And then if you're in Vegas, they've got cameras everywhere. So to what degree do they keep your private information as to who's going in and out of your room, what calls you made, what you've done? And now it turns out some of them are working with the government and handing it over to the government. Oh, that's a disaster in the making.
And the fact that you have to appeal to people and say you're at risk too, so that they can have some sort of empathy
Yes,
on them. It's the sad thing about it that you have to say, hey, your phone number could be given or your information. So, but I just think that this speaks to this everybody's a sheriff right now. People who hate everybody who's other, they're all sheriffs right now. They're always policing. The NRA made a statement talking about, and they mentioned comedy clubs. They're policing everything that they want to police comedians.
Yeah.
They want to police everybody. This just makes me sad. I've been talking about this on stage a lot, and I've been getting a lot of backlash. Some of the people here came to see. I really want these white people to imagine if back in the day when the white settlers got here, if Native Americans would have treated them the way that they treat immigrants. Imagine them chanting, "Sink that ship, sink that ship." Can you imagine if that happened? If they'd be like, no, we don't speak English here. We speak peyote. Imagine if that was the case. There's no empathy because they have no idea, but it's really sad that that bothers me the most of all, is that you have to say, hey guys, you too are at risk, for people to have empathy.
I mean, this is vigilantism. Like when we think of vigilante justice, it's usually bloody and physical and violent. And it doesn't necessarily have to be violent to be considered vigilante justice. Who are these hotel employees and what makes them think that it's acceptable to hand over personal information to federal agents, by the way, without the consent of their patrons, people who are paying to stay there. And also, just going back to the whole thing about people policing each other, that's the reason why I was infuriated with the story that we covered yesterday involving a Transylvania University student in Kentucky who created a Facebook page harassing and directing others to harass a DACA student, right, who has been in the country since she was 2 years old. And she had to deal with all sorts of threats and all sorts of harassment. I mean, come on, can we just be decent to each other?
Yes.
Yeah, so to both of your points, there's some campaign in the tri-state area, New York, New Jersey area, where it says something like, if you think something is suspicious, it probably is reported.
Oh yeah.
No, it almost certainly is not. I'm not saying don't report anything. I mean, you see some sort of bag with wires sticking out of it. My God, report that right away, okay? Right. But what it does is it encourages vigilantes. Oh, that one looks suspicious.
Yeah.
And why did it look suspicious? I don't know. I guarantee you that an overwhelming percentage of people reported as suspicious had brown skin.
Yeah.
And I also guarantee you, and we might certainly look into this and investigate it, that an overwhelming percentage of those people didn't do a damn thing. I would be shocked if that number wasn't above 90% that they didn't do anything. I'd be shocked if they ever found anybody. Like, oh, I don't know, that guy looked fishy to me, I reported it.
We have a case study with stop and frisk in New York.
Yeah, I mean, really, have we ever caught a terrorist because somebody said, I don't know, he looked fishy, and the cops were like, oh my God, it turns out he's a terrorist. I've never heard of that case, never, not once. How many times have we done a story like, oh, I thought that guy looked fishy, that we kicked him out of a plane, it turned out he was a doctor, oops, right? So, and one more thing to your point, Aida. So New York City had Muslims monitored everywhere under Bloomberg. So not just the mosque, which is already like if you did it to a synagogue, people would be outraged. If you did it to a church, you would have war over it, right? Mosque, yeah, of course, invade their mosque. What do we live in a free country? Okay, so people accept that as like obvious, right? But then they would go to other places, to community centers, and then to the schools. And we found out that they were even monitoring Rutgers students, even though they're not even in New York. And Rutgers is in New Jersey. Right. And they were monitoring at the time that Bro-Tip went there, Haas went there. Okay, I still call him Bro-Tip. Anyway, woke bag. And they probably reported back, all they do is drink. Okay, so anyway, and the conclusion of all of that, once it was revealed, was they had wasted a tremendous amount of money and not had one suspicious person that they found.
Yeah.
Not one. Yeah. All that monitoring, what did it do? It made us paranoid, it made us doubt one another, and at the end, it didn't catch any terrorists at all. If you like this video, you'll love the whole TYT network. Check it out at tytnetwork.com/join.